Like they often say art imitates life, and I kind of I kind of stopped believing in that. I kind of believe that art is sort of this higher form of consciousness or intelligence, and we sort of try to go through to this tapping into this consciousness. I feel that's where the sort of instinct comes from. It's this sort of, oh, this feels right. I don't know why, but it feels right. And I think that is sort of the artistry. Life is trying to imitate art. Like I think really that's kind of how I started seeing it.
We're kicking off this episode with a powerful storyteller, DOP, and cinematographer who will join me to talk about creating emotionally resonant, branded content through the camera. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Paul, I'm interested to know what got you into cinematography in the first place.
What got me into cinematography, it really started with, at a very young age, I actually started with skateboard videos, as many of my generation. Mm-hmm. So I started capturing my friends and I filming skateboarding, and I was always the one in front of the camera. But then after a while, like my friends, when they would film me, I would always be like, no, you got to do this angle, you got to change the angle here. And I would get more involved slowly behind the camera than in front. And then after getting heavily influenced by some of those skateboard videos that were coming out back then, I sort of started slowly transitioning and taking my camera everywhere. I bought a camera, really small, high 8, I believe, camera, and I started recording more and more of my friends, and I just slowly started transitioning into just filming the world around me, because this was all before iPhones and mobile phones and YouTube even. So I was just filming, and I would just be very captivated by the medium. And I think after high school, I was knew for certain I wanted to do something with visuals. So I went to art school first for 2 years, which was a more broader, aspect of filmmaking, I would say, or even like visual arts. But after 2 years, I really realized that I want to make movies, and as I was getting older, I started watching more and more movies, and I realized this is something I like to do. I was very captured by the power of the image, really, and still to this day, I think it really, every time it surprises me how an image just can really resonate with your whole body, and I think when I go to the cinema and I see an image and it just and it captures me, then I every time I realize the power of it. And so I think, I went to film school in Amsterdam, studied cinematography, so I did a course for 4 years, and my thesis filmed it pretty well. And that really launched me into the narrative side. And then I went to London to the NFTS, which that again led me into doing more narrative stuff. And then I was very fortunate that the director I graduated with in Amsterdam managed to get money for his first feature. And so I kind of rolled into a feature after graduating in London. And so I was kind of, I was very fortunate to be doing narrative at a very young age. Mm-hmm. And that really led me to do more and more narrative. And that really started my career. And then from there, I went more into short form and, music videos, and slowly into commercials, but that took a while, branded content. And then I would say, at an age, I was probably around 24, 25 when I made a step to go to the US. There I was really focused on doing bigger commercials and working for bigger brands, and also doing bigger features. And right now I feel I just finished a film in LA and one in New York. And I feel, thank you. Yeah. And I feel both worlds give you something else, but they're both very interlinked. And again, it doesn't really matter if you shoot something for a movie or branded content. It's again, going back to the power of the image. It's always fascinating to me. So, yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier that you were fortunate to get work right after graduating. Do you have any advice for filmmakers right now in university and how they can actually go about getting that first job, that first professional opportunity?
Yeah, I'm a strong believer of work begets work. The more you shoot, the more your stuff goes out into the world. That goes for everyone, really, an editor, a cinematographer, director. I used to be extremely, mm, I'm still very picky, but I used to be extremely like focused on what I wanted to achieve. And so I would turn down certain jobs that would lead me maybe to a bigger step quicker. So I think the focus is very important. Like really where you place your energy is really where you're going to probably get the most work. So for me, that was narrative. I really wanted to do narrative. That was really my focus. And so I would dive deep into watching movies, reading the American cinematographer, watching behind the scenes, like just getting almost obsessive in a way that helped me focus on where I wanted to go. And I think just by placing your energy there, you will get there eventually. And I think what's very important is that but in the meanwhile, it's very important to keep shooting. Like if you want to do narrative, try to get short films, even if they're no budget. Like I've done a lot of short films that did nothing. Like I've actually probably done 20 or 30% of my work didn't even come out. And it's very frustrating because you feel like you're stuck. But again, there might be you know, seriously, sometimes a PA on set that wants to be a producer and that can bring you on a next job or a recommendation. Or again, it's really your energy that like focus into where you want to go. And you will surround yourself by people automatically that know that you want to do that. And I think that was always a key thing. Even at film school, people already knew that I was wanting to go to the US, wanting to do American pictures. And you kind of get a reputation, but in a good way, I think. Like a lot of people see it as a bad thing, but I saw it as a good thing. So I think shoot for the stars, but obviously be realistic. But yeah, you'll get there. I really believe that. So shoot a lot that you want to be shooting, and don't do stuff that you don't want to do. And I know financially sometimes that's a bit challenging, very challenging. I think nowadays especially. But yeah, if you manage to get, like I was doing, I mean, I wasn't really doing wedding photography, but I was just doing all these side gigs to sort of get some money in. And in the meanwhile, I was trying to really do music videos.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And to what extent did your side gigs fuel your main objective?
Well, my case it started out quite similar. So my music videos and my narrative they were kind of leading me towards where I wanted to go. And I think that was really good because sometimes I would do an interview for a feature and they would have my music video as a reference, which for me was always kind of like, oh wow, really? And they would just, sometimes directors would be like, I just like that shot, and that shot is what I see for the end of my movie. I remember doing a South African movie called The Wound, and John, the director, he saw a music video that I shot and he didn't even see the feature that I did. Like he saw a trailer and he was like, oh, it looks cool, but it's very different. But I saw your music video and I saw that one frame, and he was like, that's exactly how I'd like to capture my main character at the end of my movie. And so sometimes one frame can be, again, the power of the image. Like, I think a lot of people underestimate what an image can do, and it can really trigger directors in a good way where they can be like, oh, wow, this image touched me. And thus, I think you might be the right person for my work. So yeah, that's why it's very important to just keep shooting. And yeah, just be passionate about what you want to do, and follow your instinct and follow your heart. Because as an artist, I think it's so important to follow your instinct. Like I've always done that, and even now, like I recently turned out a big movie, and my agents were like, oh, you should redo it. And I was like, it just doesn't feel
Mm.
right. Like it just doesn't, not maybe like, and I had an interview with the director and we had a super well connection. And even like we had two interviews, and after the second one, I just had to apologize. I was just like, yeah, I'm really sorry, but I have to follow my instinct because otherwise I can't channel my artistry for your work, and you don't want to be in that situation. And I've done that before, and it's not right. So yeah.
And I'd like to ask, as an artist, I think your instinct is very valuable. But how do you learn how to follow your instinct? Because we often don't do that.
Correct. We often try to follow the mind, which is 9 out of 10 times wrong, because your mind kind of, I mean, having done it now for a while, your mind tries to, it kind of comes from a place that is often not very honest, also towards yourself. And what I've learned in the last maybe 5, 6 years is that the mind tries to take over because it wants to be in control, right? It wants to control the outcome of the future and knowing that everything is going to be okay. And the instinct is often sort of connected to, what is really right for you. And I think we have a tendency in our society and in our world to just do everything from the mind. So as an artist, you think in that way too, and that's not good, I think. Well, I know, because I've, again, knowing is more, for me, it's all about knowing and thinking. Like you think, oh, I need to do this job because XYZ and it's going to bring me here. But the knowing is always like, that's the instinct. Like, if it feels right, I shouldn't do this job, or I like the recent movie I did. It was the one in New York. I just finished it. I get the email and I already know if I want to do it or not. Like, it's very simple. It's a yes or no. And then I did the interview, and again, there were some orange flags, and my mind was going like, oh my god, he's a young director, and maybe that will.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, but again, that's trying to control the outcome. And I just knew I wanted to do this project. And I told the director very honestly, I was like, I like your script, I like who you are, and that's kind of all I need to know. Like, it feels right. And I think if you're insecure combined with the mind, it's just gonna not lead you, well, it's gonna lead you somewhere where you're gonna find out that that was not the way. Often, not always, but often. And then you get tested again, right? Because then you've done a job that you don't want to do, and then the next job comes, because work beget work, works beget work, and then you get tested again and again and again. And I think, yeah, if you listen deeply to what feels right, yeah, you know when you get that email or that text, or maybe the person doesn't feel right, or the subject doesn't feel right. And also, I think that is a training, but if you can go back to that feeling of knowing, then your artist life as an artist can be a little bit easier.
Yeah. I agree to that. And there's also the courage to acting on your intuition because that gets in the way of the future that your mind
Yeah.
planned often,
Yeah.
really. And it's up to you to having the courage to follow through on it.
Yeah. Yeah. The mind tries to control the outcome, but there's so many factors that come into play. Like, how many times have I done a feature or a project where the actors, they get changed like 2 weeks before. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the movie I did in LA last year, we had this actress attached to it, and she pulled out like 2 weeks prior to the shoot. And your mind can't know that, like, when you walk out of your front door, there's a billion factors that come into play when you walk to the grocery store, and there's so many outcomes. And I think this is the same with artistry, or like projects that you want to take. There's so many things that come into play, so many people that get attached, and they go again, and then financing comes and financing goes. And um, you just that's why I think the only thing you really have is your instinct. And if it doesn't feel right, just don't do it. I've often had projects where other cinematographers have turned it down, and then I just knew it wasn't for them. It was for me, because the projects I did last year, some people were surprised. They were like, "Oh my god, you want to do that one?" I was like, "Yeah, it feels good to me, but
Mm-hmm.
for you, you're in a different situation, so maybe you don't need to do that project."
Yeah, it spoke out to you. I I want to talk about your work called The Wish.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I was hoping you could give the audience just a brief rundown on what it's about.
Yeah. Well, the Wish is a very special project to me, also because it came to me in a period of my life where I, in hindsight, realized that that was kind of a phase I was going through. It was during the pandemic. Obviously everybody had a very tough time, and some people more than others. But I was in a sort of challenging situation myself, and that project came on my lap, and again, I just really felt like I wanted to do it. In hindsight, again, I was following my instinct, but my mind was kind of like, I don't know, like a short film for a grocery store. Like I even told my agent, I was like, really? For like this German supermarket? My agent was like, I think you should do it. And I was like, yeah, it feels right. And then I had a call with Marcus, the director. It felt right. And I was like, okay, cool, let's just do it. And yeah, it's a story. I mean, go see it, but it's a short story about an event during the pandemic and about loneliness and about also life-changing events, I think, if you really like look at it from a bigger perspective.
Yeah.
And yeah, it had a big impact on my life too, even the project, but also shooting it and sort of the aftermath of it. So yeah.
And to me, The Wish, it spoke out to me a lot because I was in that kid's shoes during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was at home. I was missing out on social opportunities in youth, especially. So I felt the weight of the message. And to me, it was super surprising that a grocery store was the one behind it. I'm curious to
Yeah.
know why do you think Penny decided to create this branded content?
I think they really well. I know they wanted to do well. This is what I found out later as well. But they also always wanted to do one big project a year, and in this case, it was this film. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of trust between Marcus, the director, and the agency. And the agency really, what was really nice, and this is what you see often, which I think is a challenge nowadays. Well, not on every project, but a lot of projects, is that there's the relationship between director and agency when there's a good collaboration, there's a lot of freedom. And I think on the Wish, I mean, there was so much freedom and so much trust. They really just let us do our artistry, and I think it shows through. Obviously, it was storyboarded, but not really, and it was kind of, obviously we had to light. It was all shot in the studio, so we had to light everything. So of course it was all pre-planned, but it was very, yeah, there was a lot of trust in the director. And I think, again, because the director, who was, Marcus was quite young back then, well, still is, but back then for sure,
Yeah.
they were just kind of like, you can tell the story of what you feel and how you, yeah, just, he was very free to channel this sort of state of mind that a lot of us, what you're saying, is went through. And I think that's what, in branded content in general, it's so important. Or like in any content, again, it's, if you let the instinct do its job, then often you get really beautiful content. And when you start, and I see this a lot in other content I shoot, is when they start controlling it and the background and the colors, and it just becomes this sort of construct within a construct. And sometimes it works. Like some directors are, like someone like Wes Anderson is all control, but that person is trained in it. And I think in a project like this, it's very important to let the artist be free, and that's kind of what we had. So it was, yeah, pretty
Agreed.
special.
And I think that's what makes for effective branded content. And I'm curious to know, as a cinematographer, what emotions were you trying to capture with the camera and how did you go about doing it? I saw that there was like a lot of panning and zooming, and
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
hoping you could elaborate more.
Yeah. Well, I really approached it as a short film, really, as a film, or like a film, really. So we shot on the Alexa 65, um, with 65 lenses, and or DNA, I think 65. It's been a while. But we really wanted to make it, because it was also for cinema. Like they really wanted to they wanted to release it in the cinema. So we kind of knew in the back of our head that it has to be quite cinematic, or like there's the freedom to be cinematic. And I think, yeah, we wanted to be very, yeah, emotionally connected to the main character. And I think through these transitions, because a lot of it is steady cam and it's kind of flowing with him,
Yeah.
staying close, but then there's moments where we felt like, okay, let's go handheld when he has a conflict with his mom. And yeah, I mean, I didn't really, it's funny because I didn't really um have a inspiration. It was more, okay, what feels right? And it feels right to be certain moments close to the character. And I think Marcus, he did a lot of storyboarding before, and we talked a lot about it. And on the set, we would sometimes be like, oh, let's go closer or a little bit wider. But yeah, it was for me very, yeah, like I think that the ending, when we wanted to those flash moments, we just wanted to be really close. And I think 65 mil, especially with close-ups
And
is
the
really
flash
powerful.
moment is when the girlfriend is walking away from him, right?
Yeah, and it's when, and all the way at the end as well, when everything kind of comes
Right,
back.
right, right.
So I had actually, I brought I have like an old um, flashlight, like a really 1960s one, and it really captures a real burn of a flash. So it really is very organic. So we really wanted that to be sort of, yeah, very cinematic as well. So yeah, cinematic. I hate the word cinematic, but it's just long lenses and just be close with the character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know as well. Well, first of all, I think it's wonderful that you're able to have this creative freedom when it comes to shooting and using the camera with whatever lens you wanted to do, like steady holding it or panning as well, just really up to you. And when working with Marcus, or I guess directors in general, how do you go about bringing their creative vision into light?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what's very important to, like, especially in commercials and well, anything branded, it's obviously a cinematographer gets invited sort of at a very late like very late, point in the creative process. So there have been times where I have a lot of freedom, and there have been times where directors had to again tell the client like, oh, we want this and we want that, and really convince them. And you know if they want to shoot anamorphic, or if they want to shoot this certain lenses or vintage glass or whatever, it's often a very, it's a there's a lot of barriers the director has to go through. But it's either that world where you just serve more their vision, or when you get the freedom, you really get the freedom. Like, I've been on shoots where the client was just really letting us do our thing, and I think this was the case on The Wish as well, where yeah, they were just looking at it and they were just like, wow, this is beautiful. And I think often what happens is you do the first shot, and the first shot sometimes is a little bit off, and then you start out with distrust, and that sometimes gets the needle towards, okay, control from the client. And then when you often shoot something that is like the first hour or the first couple of shots are very powerful images, then the client is sort of like, they relax. Yeah, in this case, we were just very lucky. I can't remember what we shot first, but I remember it was actually, we shot it, I think, the first couple scenes. So it was very emotionally powerful with amazing actors. And so immediately the trust, what the foundation was there. And I think, so when I came, so again, even before I came in, there was already a lot of trust, but it sort of landed on set when we started really creating it. I think that is with almost everything, even when you shoot a movie. The first camera test is super important. So, you know, if you do a camera test and the first vibes are very positive, then everybody gets energized and everybody gets trust. There's a trust that comes immediately into the room, and then
Yeah,
everybody gets hyped. And I think when the first shot is a little bit, then sort of you have to change the energy. So that's the challenge.
yeah. And how do you go about changing the energy?
Well, I mean, it's hard sometimes as a cinematographer. I've been on sets where it's almost impossible to change. Like, then they just shoot into control, and then they want to change everything and outfits, and then it's, for me, it's very hard to change that energy. But I've been in sets where um I start very moody, or I start very, like, my lighting might be very how I would light a feature film.
Mhm.
And if they resonate with that, then immediately they feel like, oh wow, this is very, very cinematic and very okay, this is kind of beyond of what we thought it was going to be. And I think that is very important, that you also talk to a director about, like, how do you see the lighting, how do you see the colors, et cetera, but also if it's okay to go quite bold. So I think yeah, that's super important, like, to, again, yeah, follow your instinct. Like, and some projects you already know, like, I'm doing a commercial next week, and the director is direct to client, direct without agency. And the director already told me, is like, they love my work, they love his work, and so I know we're going to get freedom. And so I will probably, like, even like, he approached me before the storyboarding, and so I was already like, don't you want a wide here, don't you want to close, I think you want an insert, I think Steadicam, like, I'll just pretend like there's no client or no agency sometimes, and be like, oh, we should do that on a Steadicam. And then the director's like, oh yeah, of course. And then of course they have to go back to the client and be like, oh, we want to do this on a Steadicam. But yeah, often that is the best collaboration, I think, for me at least. Yeah, be bold, really, and really, again, just try to. Yeah, I mean, they're hiring you for a reason, and I think that
Mhm.
sometimes we forget that as well.
Yeah,
So
and they're hiring you for your taste, right? Going back to what you were saying, it's kind of ironic that if they're hiring you for your taste, on one hand, they're also trying to construe that on the other. So yeah, I'm understanding the balance more and more. And
yeah.
I'm curious to know, right? Because now you have this super nice, illustrious career filled with films, commercials, branded content. How does your approach differ to maybe films, maybe versus music videos, towards commercials and branded content? Do you take different strategies? Do you approach them similarly? What do you do?
Well, I used to. I think what is very challenging in our industry. I mean, in any industry, even as a photographer or an artist, it doesn't really matter what you do. I think what's very healthy is to have a healthy balance between passion projects and money jobs. And I think, every project you learn from, whether even on money jobs, sometimes I learn things. And I think, you know, I try not to, I try to approach everything with the same mindset, really. I don't have they want it slick, or, oh, this is a lifestyle thing, so they want bright. Really, like sometimes I think on set, like this question actually I asked myself, like, how would I like this if this was an ad or a movie? Yeah, if you again choose the right projects, then you will just again channel your instinct. So you're channeling really like what you feel that feels right. And I think it doesn't really matter if it's a film or not, or a commercial or a music video. Like when I get the project, I kind of have an instinct of what I want to do. And often that can change along the way. Like that is happening a lot. The movie I did in New York just recently, we started out very much on sticks, and then we as we were going through the process, me and the director realized, like, oh my god, this doesn't work. And it didn't feel right, so we just went more on the shoulder. But there's been a project where I went the other way around, like where we wanted more on the shoulder, and then we ended up just everything on dolly and very controlled, and it was the right thing for that project. So yeah, I think be ballsy and be, yeah, really. What I also come to learn is that, like, they often say art imitates life, and kind of I kind of stopped believing in that. I kind of believe that art is sort of this. It sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's this higher form of consciousness or intelligence, and we sort of try to go through to this tapping into this consciousness, if that makes sense. And I think, I mean, it sounds very heavy, but it kind of, I feel that's where the sort of instinct comes from. It's this sort of, oh, this feels right. I don't know why, but it feels right. And I think that is sort of the artistry. The more you're connected with that, the more you are following your instinct. And I think the least you're connected with that, you're more going into the mind, and then you're trying to control the outcome, or you're trying to copy something you've seen before. And that's why I think life is trying to imitate art. Like I think really that's kind of how I started seeing it, only in the last maybe 5 or 6 years. And I think before that I was probably doing it more subconsciously, but now much more aware of it, that it's, yeah, that again with the wish, it came to me at a point in my life where I was probably also ready to do a project like that. And now in hindsight, I know it did, because I was living it myself. So I was creating the art, but my life was also leading towards that. And so, yeah, I think if you go into that mindset of it's bigger than me, then yeah, you can connect better to your instinct. If that makes sense.
Oh, I fully agree with you, and you're phrasing it a lot better than I could. I think we're vessels for creative forces to express themselves, and exactly as you're saying, it's up to us to open that vessel, right? And that's our
Yeah.
intuition, that's how it's being expressed. Those are the creative juices coming down and being channeled through us, through some sort of
Yeah.
medium. And I
Yeah.
mean to
Yeah.
elaborate on that too, and I'm kind of paraphrasing Rick Rubin here, right? Because I opened myself up to this through reading his book, The Creative Act. But that creativity, it's not just for us, right? Those ideas, they're just going to move on to the next person.
Yeah.
And the more I live and the more that I create, the more that I believe this and internalize it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to what he says. Like, I know because I feel the same. But what really is blocking you from getting access to that sort of art cloud is really your mind and your subconscious insecurities, and those are all programs in your mind, right? Where you're like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I need to reach the highest level, or I need to do this, or thinking about the steps you're going to have to take to get there. I used to be super insecure about that, or jealous, or when I started out especially, and now I'm starting to realize, well, if I'm looking at their work, I'm like, well, they probably picked the right cinematographer for that job. And then when they come to me, if they ever would come to me, then I would probably be right for that particular job. And I think, yeah, that's also trusting the process, trusting that, yeah, it goes in the right way. And it is very hard because took me years to get to that point. And even now, sometimes I'm like, like, why is it not coming? And what's like this movie I did in LA with a lot of challenges. And
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, relax. Try to think of it that it will come at the right time. And if it doesn't, it's also, yeah, it's not fun, but it's also okay.
A lot of your work has a way of bringing out strong emotion through
Mm.
human suffering. Macmillan and Cancer. There's also Sean Maran and Don't Judge Me for oppression of African Americans. Why do you think this medium is so effective, and why should brands align themselves up with such messages?
Yeah, I think this comes back to what I was saying earlier, where I think what we don't really understand yet, and I feel I'm even starting to learn this more and more, is that I really think, again, going to the power of the image. Like I keep repeating the sentence, but it's really like I'm almost seeing it now as like an image could be almost like a QR code for your subconscious or your mind, right? It just reads an image and it sort of downloads a certain context, or it triggers something within you. And I think again, the more you're in tune with your instinct, the more you're able to read what's in front of you. And I feel, maybe because I've trained that um, throughout the years, or I've always felt like connected to this or something, I feel that is why I feel maybe I can see those images better on set. And I've like, even on Macmillan, it was very, I mean, I don't like the word documentary, but it was very in the moment. Like,
Mhm.
we would just set up the scene and I would just capture it. The director, like Jonathan and we worked together a bunch of times, and I would just kind of take over control, because I would just see an image and I would realize, I don't know why, again, instinct, where I was like, okay, we need to be close on this person, or now I need to pan to the left and end up on this person, or I would see in the corner of my eye, like, oh, this person is about to cry, go back. And I think, again, it's understanding, yeah, really, like, if you go back to the ancients, like the real ancients, like thousands of years ago, they spoke in image. That's why we can't really read their text anymore, because they just use imagery, and imagery would just be like literally on a wall, right? In even in ancient Egypt, it's just lines of images. And so when you probably read it, but your mind probably can read it better than you, or your subconscious brain. And I think this is the same with images. Like, if you go and see an image, yeah, as a brand, or even as a director or whatever, you just have to understand that that's a powerful thing to make, much more than I think we realize. And I think that's also the beauty of it. That's why I mean, I'm like, the whole AI thing, I'm just kind of like, well, it's so generic. And I think with something like a movie, or even a strong image, it just can provoke so much triggers in a good and in a bad way. And I think that's kind of again, it's trying to see that on set, and trying to, like, again, follow your instinct on set, where you're just seeing, oh, we need to be here, because if we're here, we can make this person bigger, and then that person will feel like XYZ. And so this is a powerful image. And I think with Shamaran, for instance, or Don't Judge Me, we had a lot of, like, I just think in that way. I don't know, like, again, instinct. I just follow my instinct. And sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, of course. But yeah, it's kind of how I see it.
I mean, Paul, I appreciate your dedication to narrative, your willingness and courage to follow your instinct. And as an artist and in cinematography, I think those are very powerful and virtuous skills to have.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you had any closing remarks or advice to give to the audience, to fellow filmmakers and cinematographers.
Yeah, I think if there's something I would have had loved to have known earlier is that stop comparing yourself to others.
Yeah.
You know, that's something I used to do a lot, and I only recently stopped doing it, and it really liberates yourself as an artist. And it's still super hard. I mean, I still sometimes look at other people's work and think, oh my God, this person is only 24 and is only doing this and this. And I realized, as also I'm getting older, that it doesn't work that way. And your path is really like, everybody does it in their own way, because there is only, you know, there's multiple ways to do it. But yeah, everybody does it in their own way, because there is no one way to do it. And I think that is really a piece of advice I would have loved to have when I just came out of film school. But again, you're young and you wanna be there with the grades, but yeah, you have your own path, and whatever that path may lead you to where you need to go in life, it's, you know, it's a bigger thing that comes into there's so many factors that come into play. And again, the wish came to me at a point where I wasn't expecting it, and I probably was ready for that project. And it's the same with films. And sometimes it's extremely challenging to keep reminding you that this is how it works. You know, again, sometimes I go back to the control and thinking, I need to do this and I need to go XYZ and I need to take these projects. But now I'm much more like, okay, just try to do the jobs that you get the best as you can with as much passion, and those will lead you hopefully to where you want to go. So still set a goal, but accept if there might be a sidetrack that leads you there.
Paul, I want to thank you for your time.
Of course.
We seriously had a wonderful conversation with you. I'm excited to staying in touch and continuing to follow your journey.
Thanks.
With that being said, we're the Votary Podcast, guys. Thank you for watching this episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thank you.